Hi there, it's Mrs. Jackman, and this week in Living Earth, you're going to be learning about structures and how they function to do the process of homeostasis. So, there are going to be three things you're going to do this week. The first one involves reading from the online book, the second, just two sections in the book. The second activity is a little lab you're going to do about exercise. And then there's an assessment at the end, and you can use your notes for the assessment. So if you want to take notes, maybe even now you want to stop this video and go grab a piece of paper to take some visual notes, then you can use those notes when you're taking the quiz at the end of the week. Section 1, Explore Explain 1, is about control systems. And control systems are designed to keep something stable despite a changing environment, which is kind of the definition of what homeostasis is. And so you're going to see this model that shows a balance, and you see things get out of balance, and then the mechanisms are designed to put things back in balance. So they always have this balance point is referred to as the set point. And they use an example in your book about somebody riding their bike. So if you were riding your bike, you're physically balancing. If you hit a bump in the road or some change in the environment, that would be the stimulus, would be the bump in the road. And then how you perceive that change in the environment, you have to have some sort of receptor to do that. So a lot of times that's your sensory organs. And in this case, you have a little part inside of your ear called your inner ear. This little, these three little rings can perceive motion and acceleration. So if you're tipping over, that's the part of your body that would perceive your balance or your sense of balance. That information then would have to be relayed or conveyed to a control center. So in this situation, your control center isn't something conscious, really. Once you've learned how to ride your bike, you don't think, oh, I need to lean a little more to the right or a little more to the left. But this part of your brain called the cerebellum, which is in your subconscious area of your brain, determines that you need to do something because you're not in balance and you're going to tip over. So then that control center, usually made of the brain or spinal cord, sometimes it's endocrine glands, sends a message to a part of your body that can do something about it. So in this case, the part that can do something about it is your muscles. You're going to pull yourself the opposite direction from which you're falling. And sometimes the effector is a gland, sometimes it's a muscle, but usually it's something that can act. So it has some sort of movement going on in it. And then you'll pull yourself back into balance again. So in this example, this was an example where the stimulus pushed you out of balance in one direction, and the response puts you back in the opposite direction. So when the response is in the opposite direction as the stimulus, that type of mechanism is called a negative feedback loop to help keep you in a constant environment. There are some examples when the response actually pushes you farther off balance. So the stimulus goes in one direction and the response goes farther in that direction. So instead of your balance getting rebalanced, it gets tipped farther and farther and farther off balance. That type of feedback mechanism is called a positive feedback loop. And it can't go on forever. You'd like fall over or go in circles. So usually positive feedback loops end in some sort of culminating event. Your book has one example that's pretty good is childbirth. In childbirth, the pressure on the cervix of a woman's uterus keeps getting pushed harder and harder and harder. And eventually a baby pops out. And then that's when that whole feedback loop stops, because then there's no more pressure on the cervix. So the next section, Explore Explain 2, is going to show you how some specific control mechanisms happen inside your body that involve interactions between lots of different body systems. So messages are usually sent between receptors with nerves or hormones, and hormones are always, of course, traveling through your bloodstream, going through your heart, and can go all over your whole body. Sometimes the effectors are glands. For example, If you were riding and you tipped and you got really scared, your adrenal glands might squirt out some hormone, and then that hormone would travel through your bloodstream and do things like affect your heart to beat faster and maybe make your sweat glands squirt some sweat. So you're going to read about some internal examples where the receptors are not your sensory organs, but they're things that perceive things like oxygen concentration, carbon dioxide concentration, pH, glucose concentration, things that control how much your kidneys are excreting water and how much they're conserving salt, just keeping all those chemical concentrations constant inside of you. So then you're going to do this activity to look at the effect of exercise, which you know requires food and oxygen and your mitochondria to be working a lot. And how does it have an impact on your heart rate and your respiratory rate? So for this activity, sometimes when students are doing this in class, they kind of exercise like they do really little jumping jacks. You actually have to exercise vigorously so that you can get your heart rate and your breathing rate to really show a change. So make sure that you're not just doing something passively, but you're very actively exercising. You could jump rope, you could step up and down on a chair, you could run in place, you could do jumping jacks. I recommend putting on some of your favorite music and dancing really, really hard. You can do this lab by yourself, but you might want to recruit someone else in your family to record the information of your respiratory rate and your heart rate so that you can get back to your jumping around and dancing as quickly as possible. At the end of the week, there will be a quiz, a Google Forms quiz, and you should take this until you get a good score. You can take it more than once, and if you have been taking notes, you can refer to your notes as you're working. It'll also recommend certain areas, specific areas that you should revisit if you miss particular questions. So that's the week. I hope you have a good time and learn a lot. We'll see you later.